Janaranjana Jashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Manachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Finish. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Wait for it. He Ko Premanande Hari Hari Bo. So today is a class on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is what is called the fruit of all the ancient wisdom literatures called the Vedas. They're compared to a tree, and the purpose of a tree ultimately is to produce a fruit. And so out of the immensity of this tree of knowledge, which goes into various arts, sciences, ways of living in the world, so that one may be progressive in various ways. The ultimate end is to come to perfect knowledge, which is exhibited by our realignment with our original divine source. The Vedas, or the summary of the Upanishads, which are the first part of the wisdom literatures that indicate there's something more than just organizing things in this world for our happiness. And they seek to inform us about the fact that we're not our bodies, we're actually the soul within the body. And that our real interest lies in something beyond matter, or consciousness. And the summary of all those Upanishads is in the Vedanta Sutra, the Brahma Sutra, which starts with Atato Brahma Jignasa. Now is the time to inquire. Now that you're a human being, you can ask much bigger questions than how can I survive in the world? That's the same question that the animals ask. Where's the worm? And where's my shelter? And so forth. But they say, feel free to ask the biggest question. What's the ultimate purpose of life? And even dare to ask questions such as, how may I rise above the anomalies of this world, the most pressing of which is death, that vexes everyone. It's almost taboo to even speak about it in this world because it seems futile. And then they say, Janmadyasya taha, that we all come from a common source. And it is in describing this book called the Brahma Sutra. The sutra is a code, is to be unpacked, like a zip file, and then you open it, and it has multiple pages and information. And that's this book, Srimad Bhagavatam, that's in 12 cantos, 18,000 verses, meant to be consumed a step at a time on a daily basis. So this class that we're having now started thousands of years ago, not here in Toronto, but in a forest called Naimisharanya. And it was a gathering of sages who had a seminar, and their seminar pertained to what's the greatest good that one could do for oneself and for all living beings. That was the topic of the seminar. And previous to the seminar, there had been a very important conversation between a king named Parikshit and a sage named Shukadev. The story unfolded when the king, who was very popular and still young, had been cursed to die in 7 days. He gave up his kingdom, went down to the Ganges and sat down to ascertain what he should do with the last 7 days of his life. And many people came to give advice. Like when you get a cold, everyone will tell you how to cure it. But a very special sage who happened to be wandering with the idea that he wanted to give the knowledge he had gained from his father, Srila Vyasadeva, who happens to be the author or the editor of all these books of wisdom. That sage was named Shukadeva, and he happened to meet, it was serendipitous, the king, Parikshit, at that place, at the Ganges. And when he arrived, did Shukadeva, the sage, who was a 16-year-old boy at the time, all the venerable sages, some of them were hundreds of years old, they stood up in respect and they offered a seat of esteem to Shukadeva to become the speaker. And Shukadeva spoke to Parikshit Maharaj for nearly 7 days without stopping. Parikshit didn't take time to eat or drink anything, nor did he sleep. And that's when the book was first recited. Sutta Goswami also heard the recitation. And being that his memory was perfect, he was then able to recount the exact same topics, the entire book, to the sages at Naimisharanya. So you'll find in this book intertwined or nested stories of Shukadeva speaking to Parikshit and Sutta, who heard it in their conversation with the sages at Naimisharanya. And today, I'm going to read a verse, but probably not from this volume, since I'm speaking from the first canto, this is the 10th canto, in which the sage Sutta, who I just mentioned, is giving some very practical advice for anyone who wants to improve their life. And he gives an analogy in the verse we're about to read of earth, then wood, then smoke, then fire. And these represent a progression that we can be involved with in the human form of life. And it refers to, and if you don't mind, please bring me a Bhagavad Gita. It refers to how we can come out of darkness and into light, to use an age-old metaphor. In this case, it's talking about the difference between earth and fire. And in context, the reason that we can make progress, and when I say progress in the context of the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, it means to improve our consciousness. Consciousness, or I should say, we are conscious. We're conscious entities. We inhabit a material body, which is biomechanical robot, so to speak, but we're the one who animates it. And there's a way in which, when we come into the world, it said, jnana, timirandasya jnananjana shalakaya. We're born into a state of ignorance. That's why we have to go to school. I can even remember the first day they sent me to kindergarten. And I learned how to finger paint. And then first grade, second grade, learned how to read and write. Third grade, arithmetic. Fourth grade, calculus. No, just kidding. But everyone needs some reformation of consciousness, both for practical learning and then for ascertaining the ultimate goal of life. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives a context for this world that we're in, and he says that it's ruled, this world, by three modalities. Beginning with the bottom of the hierarchy of modalities, which is called tamas, or darkness. In tamas, we're helpless. If you've ever felt helpless, for instance, if you have some addiction and you can't give it up, or you feel so depressed that you can't do anything, this is the modality of tamas. Above tamas comes rajas. Rajas is the modality of intense activity. That is, we're creative. In rajas, however, the setback is that no matter what we get, it's not enough, because we remain in that active and creative mode. We attain something, we create something, but it has to become more. We may attain a position, for instance. You may become a city council member, but then think, well, that's nothing. I want to be the mayor. And when you become mayor, you may think, well, why don't I become governor? And after becoming governor, etc., etc. There's never an end point. In modern parlance, it's called the hedonic treadmill. That is, no matter what I get, it's not enough. And there are plenty of songs and poems from ancient times and modern times expressing the experience of being in rajas and tamas. For instance, I can't get no satisfaction. And many, many more, like too much is not enough, etc. And then there's the highest of the modalities in this world called sattva. And sattva is the mode of clarity, the modality of clarity, where we see ourselves beyond the body. And gone is the drive to attain something, because we realize we already are something. We are something that's so amazing. And as Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, when you see yourself beyond the body, you realize that this is the most amazing thing. The soul itself, Krishna says, Ascharyavat, he calls it amazing. Ascharyavat. Some see it as amazing, some hear of it as amazing, and when you analyze who you really are, you examine your consciousness, or you become introspective, then you don't feel that you have to attain anything necessarily, because you already are something and you're here right now, and you feel tushta, or satisfaction in the self. This is sattva. But there's a modality beyond sattva, which is called Shuddha sattva, which is a completely transcendental realm. Transcendental to the modes means you've gone beyond any of the modalities in the material world, and this is pure consciousness. So the perfection of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is to come to that pure consciousness. And today, we'll hear an authentic verse from Sanskrit, from the teachings of Sutta to the sages of Naimisharanya. And it looked a lot like this, only it was in a forest with everyone sitting together. And Sutta, who is elected by the sages to speak, said the following. And here's the translation from the Sanskrit. Firewood is a transformation of earth, but smoke is better than the raw wood. And fire is still better, for by fire we can derive the benefits of superior knowledge through Vedic sacrifices. Similarly, passion, rajas, is better than ignorance, tamas, but goodness, sattva, is best, because by goodness one can come to realize the absolute truth. And now I'll read the purport, which is the authors or the translators and explanation of the verse in the context of what all the previous teachers going back 5,000 years have said about this verse. It's a synthesis. As explained above, one can get release from the conditioned life of material existence by devotional service to the personality of Godhead. This is one of the themes of Sutta Goswami's talk. He mentions that there is an ultimate object of meditation. So this is one of the principles we find in this book, the Bhagavad Gita, in which Krishna says, Jayato Vishayam Pumsam Sangasteshu Pajayate. And the word jayato comes from the Sanskrit word ti, which means to absorb your mind in something. When your mind is fully fixed on one thing, you're in the mode of absorption. And this is consequential. It's based on a principle that many of us have heard in the modern day, which is where attention goes, energy flows. Whatever you focus on, that's where your energy goes. That's where you'll end up. If your attention is apportioned randomly, then you'll feel a divided sense of consciousness, otherwise known as being scatterbrained or confused, and so forth. Confused means there are many different elements fusing together in your mind. One of the purposes of meditation is to learn how to fix the mind on one point. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that when we look at this world randomly and we get attached to various items, then we start to take on the quality of those items ourselves, because we're impressionable and our minds are malleable. And so he says, Jayato Vishayam Pumsang, whatever you contemplate in this world, Sangas Teshu Pajayate, you develop a connection to, a Sangha. Anga means a part, and Sangha means that it becomes part of you. So, for instance, if I look at a car, and I say, I have to have that car, and then you go to buy one, and the person who's selling it to you may say, oh, sit in it. And you sit in it. I was like, he's looking at you through the passenger window and said, that's really you. That sense of that's really me in the Bhagavad Gita is called ahankar, which fits well the idea of car. I am my car. Literally means ahankar, that I'm the doer. But there's a way in which we identify with various things in the world and they become me. So if somebody bumps my new car, then I say, what? You hit me. And so this is the idea of Sangha. Now this car is me, and I dare say, although there's not that much traffic out in Toronto right now, but somebody's getting hit somewhere in their car right now. And we don't care, because it's not our car. But if we parked outside and we hear a sound of screeching and it sounds like our car, our heart will palpitate, we'll start to feel perspiration coming, and when we run to the window and look out, we say it's not our car, it's Anshu's car, then suddenly we feel better. A car is a car, it's metal, wood, and glass, and so forth. But when we've invested our consciousness in it, it becomes part of me. And so we take on the world. We absorb ourselves in the world, Krishna says, by meditating on it. I look at it, I contemplate it, I think, oh, that could be real, that's me, that's mine. And there's a gulf of difference between I and mine. I say my hand, I don't say I hand. So the idea is, there's a way in which this world is superfluous to us, but we take it on. We become part of the world by our meditation, by what we look at. So this is a very important principle, as explained here. One can get release from the conditioned life of material existence by devotional service to the personality of Godhead. So what does that mean? We're all doing something. No one can stop doing something. Even when you go to sleep, you'll dream and you're active. You may even go to work in your dream. And Who knows if you get paid or not, but you still are active in your dream state. When you wake up, you act again. The highest form of action that one can take in this world is service to the Supreme. That's the verdict of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're serving here, there, we're acting here and there, but if we can ascertain the ultimate object of meditation, which the Vedas and the Srimad Bhagavatam confirm, is that from which everything else has emanated. This is called the Supreme. And the sages have also confirmed that that source is personal. As we're all persons, we come from a source, so it has to be at least personal, because its emanation can't be more than it is. So this is their conclusion. And to serve that original source is the highest form of activity. So that's the first concept that comes here. And it's applicable. It's something that's practicable by us. The next sentence is, it is further comprehended herein that one has to rise to the platform of the mode of goodness, sattva, so that one can be eligible for devotional service to the Lord. But if there are impediments on the progressive path, anyone, even from the platform of tamas, that's the lowest mode, can gradually rise to the sattva platform by the expert direction of the spiritual master. Spiritual master is like an attorney who's studied the law books. If you get in legal trouble, don't try to defend yourself. Sadistically, it doesn't work out well. Find somebody who's given their full attention to understanding the law. They know the law books, backwards and forwards. And in fact, I once saw a t-shirt that said, a good lawyer knows the law, and a great lawyer knows the judge. So the idea behind a spiritual master is someone's intimately involved with the process of devotional service and has a command of what's called the Shastra, or the wisdom literatures, and can guide somebody. That's what it means by spiritual master. Sincere candidates must therefore approach an expert spiritual master for such a progressive march. And the bona fide expert spiritual master is competent to direct a disciple from any stage of life, tamas, rajas, or sattva. And that's what's happening in this context, is that the sages have accepted Sutta as their teacher or spiritual master. It is a mistake, therefore, to consider that worship of any quality or any form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is equally beneficial, except Vishnu. All separated forms are manifested under the conditions of material energy, and therefore the forms of material energy cannot help anyone to rise to the platform of sattva, which alone can liberate a person from material bondage. This goes back to the principle of you become what you meditate upon. Therefore, what Sutta is saying is, find that object of meditation that's beyond the three modes of material nature. We call the ultimate object of meditation. U-O-M, ultimate object of meditation. Because you become what you're meditating on. You go where you're meditating. The uncivilized state of life, or the life of the lower animals, is controlled by the mode of tamas. The civilized life of man with a passion for various types of material benefits is the stage of rajas. The rajas stage of life gives a slight clue to the realization of the absolute truth in the forms of fine sentiments in philosophy, art, and culture with moral and ethical principles. But the mode of sattva is a still higher stage of material quality, which actually helps one in realizing the absolute truth. In other words, there is a qualitative difference between the different kinds of worshiping methods, as well as the respective results derived from the predominating deities, namely Brahma, Vishnu, and Hara. That's a little technical, but the word worship, it can be a trigger word, worship, but let's see where it comes from etymologically. Originally, it comes from the word worth. And that is, what do you consider most valuable? When you put ship on the end of a word, it becomes a noun. So originally the word was worth-ship. But as with all languages, they morph over time to accommodate the tongue. And the word worth-ship became worship. What it really means is, what is most valuable to you? What do you consider to be the ultimate object of your meditation? So here, there are two very simple concepts. It's a metaphor that is describing the various states of life in a hierarchy from low to high. And that all attainments in this world have to do with ascending the modalities and coming at least to sattva, or clarity in life. And it's compared to, Sutta compares it to the earth. From where earth comes raw wood, and then when you try to start raw wood on fire, you get smoke. So the raw wood is what is called tamas, darkness, and then the smoke is rajas, which is an appropriate way to describe it, because as Prabhupada mentions, smoke rarely serves, it usually disturbs. And the same with rajas. We're doing a lot, but it may not actually serve us well, ultimately. Just seems like something's going on. And sattva is like when the fire breaks out. Now, fire is highly useful because you can use it, as it mentions here, for Vedic sacrifices or for many other things. But fire represents clarity. When your consciousness comes alive to the possibilities of life. And so Sutta is saying in this section that there is a way to gradually elevate oneself from the lowest to the highest modality in the material world, and then to transcend that to come to pure consciousness, which is the ultimate goal of life. And that pure consciousness has to do with our original connection, or it's said an eternal connection we have with our source, who's called Abhigna and Swarat, fully conscious and fully independent, and we're parts of that. So that's the gist of the verse. And now let's see if there's any reflections, which means anything you heard that piqued your interest and you'd like to reflect back, a concept, an idea, a word, or if you have a question that you think will expand the conversation.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Excellent class on exposing the introduction on the Srimad Bhagavatam. My question is, how does one always rise above the modality of goodness in this while living in the material world? Is there any general advice you have on that?
How does one rise to the mode of goodness, or rise above?
Rise above the mode of goodness to the pure goodness, or transcending it.
So what a practical question. Thank you very much. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna answers this question in one verse where he says, Mam cha yo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Let me explain. So, if one gives full attention, he's saying, to the transcendent source of everything, what's called the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Krishna, the ultimate object of meditation. Mam chayo vyabhicharena means that that's your main focus. Bhakti yogena sevate. And how do you give that focus? With a sense of devotion. Because you really can't concentrate on something for a long period of time unless you like it. Right? I mean, there's only so long you can stare at a wall, or a candle flame, or the sky. But if in the ultimate object of meditation, you're fascinated, or let me put it in better English. If you are fascinated by the ultimate object of meditation, or the object of meditation that you're fixing your mind on, then it's possible you could become really absorbed in that. And that's why the nomenclature for the original source of everything is Krishna. Krishna, well, let me start with another word. Who's heard the word charisma? I should have said who hasn't. Say charisma 4 times. Sounds like people chanting Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. It has the same meaning. Charisma means somebody who has such attractive features that people can't avoid gravitating towards them. And that's what Krishna means also, from Sanskrit. Krishna means the all-attractive, the attractor, that which pulls us in. So the verse says, Mam chayo vyabhicharena. So Krishna is speaking in the Bhagavad Gita, and he says, when you bring your attention to me, Mam chayo vyabhicharena, and you become absorbed in me out of a sense of devotion, you're doing devotional service. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. You're doing service, that's what sevate means, in a sense of bhakti, or out of like worship, because you think this is the most valuable. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitaitan. Atita means to rise above something. So, and gunan means these modalities that I'm speaking about. Gunan also means ropes, because the modalities tie us up. So he says, here's the way to rise above all 3 of the modalities. That includes tamas, rajas, sattva. You can rise above all 3 of them. Brahma bhuya yakalpate. You can come to the stage of pure consciousness. How do you do it? By devotional service. There's various ways of performing devotional service, but the first and most effective way, says an ancient wisdom literature called the Padma Purana, which is written thousands of years ago, just like the Srimad Bhagavatam, says that it all begins with the tongue. And this is practical because, well, you could consider a boat, and the rudder is extremely important in a boat. I know that from personal experience. My father built a sailboat and taught my brother and me how to sail it. And I remember one time asking, like, what's this for? There's a rudder. And he goes, well, why don't you take it out and find out? We were topsy-turvy without the rudder. So the Padma Purana says, all yoga begins with the tongue. It's very practical. Because even if you look at your tongue in the mirror, it looks like a rudder. It says, Atashi Krishna nama nina bhaved grayam indriye sevan mukhihi jivado swayameva spratya. There's that word again, seva, which means service. So he says, if you begin yoga with the chikwa, which means the tongue, adao means begin it there, then very easily you can rise above the modes and see Krishna directly. So the primary means for serving and the beginning point is to use your tongue. So how might you use your tongue in service? Or we say the yoga of the tongue. You can imagine maybe your tongue trying to do downward dog or something like that. Not exactly. It says the tongue has 2 functions. One is to say something, and the other is to taste something. So these are included in the process of bhakti yoga. I'll start with saying something. When we use the tongue to repeat the divine mantra, the divine mantra connects us to our original source, Krishna, and that's why devotional service is identified so much with this chanting which goes Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. That's a form of devotional service. This is a chant. And the second is coming up in just a few minutes. We'll serve breakfast to everyone, but it's not an ordinary breakfast. All the food in the temple is cooked with love and devotion and first offered to Krishna, and then it becomes what's called prasadam. Prasadam means the favor of God. So then when you taste it, you feel a kind of upliftment spiritually from the tasting of prasad. So that doesn't sound like too bad of a lifestyle. In fact, when I was a kid, I was about 14 years old, and I wanted to find spiritual life, so I read a lot of books that I could find. That's pre-internet and way pre-ChatGPT. So I could, whatever I could find in the library near me. And I took to an eclectic, austere lifestyle, including a lot of fasting. And then I got information about Bhakti Yoga in a magazine called Back to Godhead magazine. And I read a section that said, actually, yoga begins with chanting, dancing, and feasting. And I said, okay, show me where that one is. And so these elements of bhakti seem like a joyous festival type environment, and it is. In fact, the spiritual world, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is full of singing, dancing, and tasting everything that's real. This world is a reflection of reality, but in the spiritual world we actually get true enjoyment. And that can be done as a practice here in this world, and that elevates us above the three modes of material nature. That's the thesis given in Srimad Bhagavatam itself and in the Bhagavad Gita, and anybody can follow it in this world. Let's see if there's one more question. Yes? Mahabhagavat? Two things?
Yes. One was you talked about that bee who got stuck in the lotus
Yes?
the other day, and then you reminded us of that yesterday. And
Okay,
today-
let me, for those who didn't hear it, it was in the newspaper, so I'll just recount it. A bee flew into a lotus garden and landed in the most fragrant of all lotuses. As most people know, or probably most people don't know, lotuses close at night. So a sage came through the forest, saw the bee comfortably seated on the lotus flower, and warned him that you should come out because the lotus is going to close. And the bee said, I'll do it later. He was a procrastinator. And he said, I'll come out in the morning when it opens again. So he stayed there, but that night after the lotus closed, a mad elephant came through the lotus garden and he gobbled up all the lotuses. That's a story to not procrastinate. Okay, go ahead.
So one bee did come inside this morning with the flowers, and he got stuck in the room because there was a thing. But fortunately, there was someone to help him out.
That happened today?
This morning
Oh.
at home when we were doing the worship with the flowers, a bee
Yeah.
came inside and got stuck indoors, buzzing, trying to get out here and there. But fortunately, there was someone to help him out,
Who was that someone?
some priest,
Oh, okay.
and helped him out. And but I was just reflecting that what you are talking about is that you know a good lawyer is someone who knows the judge.
Yeah.
So a good spiritual master is someone who helps you out of the mess that we land ourselves in. That was the first thing that I was thinking about. And the second thing I was thinking about was that one of the phrases that is used about things that are somehow scammy or some sham or something, they use the phrase smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke and mirrors. So I was just reflecting how the world that we see around us and get attached to is a really slick smoke and mirrors job.
It is, and in fact, poetically, Prabhupada in one of his purports calls the whole material experience a colossal hoax. And then elsewhere, there's a phrase he uses, it's not so common nowadays, but it's common in English literature. It's called will-o'-the-wisp. I heard that for years, reading Prabhupada's books, will-o'-the-wisp. And I thought, what is that? So I looked it up and traced it back. It has to do with organic matter that spontaneously combusts and it creates a flame. If you have organic matters, it heats up and then it can actually catch on fire. And the will-o'-the-wisp means literally that there's that flame in the dark, and travelers may see it and think this is the way. And they follow the light and they end up in a marsh because they're misled. That's the meaning of will-o'-the-wisp. So oftentimes Prabhupada describes the whole material world as will-o'-the-wisp. That you're chasing something that looks bright, but when you get there, you find yourself in a quagmire, and it's hard to get out. Both your points are well taken, Ma Bhagavat. Thank you very much. Brilliant. We have time for one more. If anybody wants to ask a question or make a comment.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. You mentioned that when somebody is in tamas, you cannot make a decision and come out of it. Is that?
Well, you may have a glimmer of a idea making a decision, but, well, for instance, take addiction, because I mentioned it. Someone may have the intelligence to think this is really a bad idea, but then they can't do anything about it. Practically, that's what addiction means. That you may even be aware, this is really bad for me, could even kill me, but you still do it anyway. That's the indication of tamas, or darkness. So, yeah, go ahead, continue your question.
So for example, a devotee, a practitioner, whether it be Madhyamadhikari or Kanishtadhikari, right? So what should that devotee do at that time if he's stuck at that moment, could not make a decision in the material life outside of the devotional service?
What should you do if you're stuck in tamas?
Yes, a devotee.
A devotee,
Yeah.
stuck in tamas, what should you do?
Yeah.
Well, it's a really practical question, and it definitely pertains to the class today. Well, when you get stuck in the mud, you call AAA, right? Oh, you don't have AAA here, do you? That's the American Automobile Association. Oh, CAA. So A? C-A-A. I mean, that's how you spell Canada. C-A-D-A. C-A-N-A-D-A. CAA. You call CAA. So if you're stuck in the mud in your devotional service, call Bhakti Marg Swami. Or if, so much is dependent on our association. This is one of the other themes of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says we're a product of our association. And so the science of association, if one understands it, one could then call for help and ask somebody who's already out of the mud to help one to hook up some kind of apparatus and get you pulled out. And I've seen that when I am proactive about it, because I'm practically always stuck in the mud. So I have a speed dial. That's an old term. And I had certain people that I call on and say, hey, look, I'm stuck in the mud. Do you want to help me get out? And then they pull me out. So it's helpful to have association. That's why we have associations in human society, so we can stay focused on the topic. There's a Rotary Club. You have that in Canada, right? So why do you go to the Rotary Club? Well, like-minded people, progressive. Why do you have, I don't know, what other kind of associations? What? The Freemasons. Name three more. Stock exchange. Scavenging? For scavengers? Scouting, yeah, for scouting. You go into the scouts, or even in the military, you join the military, and there's a concerted effort there for reformation. There's boot camp to get you out of the lower modes, and then there's refinement that goes on. Universities, that's a kind of, the whole idea was to let's get all the best knowledge in one place and then invite people who are interested in a progressive life. It wasn't so vocational back then, it was more classical education. The idea was you'll be elevated by associating with others and consuming the knowledge. So Prabhupada once said there's two things necessary to make progress. One is knowledge and the other is practice. So if you have access to the knowledge and you also have something practical you can do, and you do it in association with others, it's easy to get, easy-ish, easier to get out of the mud. So thank you very much for participating in the Srimad Bhagavatam class, a tradition that goes back 5,000 years at least, which means just sit here, some wisdom, discuss it, and then throughout the day you can contemplate it. So it's a good way to start the day. And if you read one verse of Srimad Bhagavatam a day, you'll finish in 50 years. So you can calculate that according to the actuary charts, how much longer you have to live. And you might want to do 2 verses a day, I don't know. If you smoke, maybe do 5 verses a day, something like that. I'd also like to acknowledge His Holiness Bhakti Marg Swami, who is one of my most important mentors in life. I just notice when I come into his environment that devotional service becomes fun. He makes life fun, he makes devotional service fun, and he's one of the tow trucks that pulls me out of the mud of this world, and he's the one who invited me here in the first place many years ago, and I'm very grateful to you. Thank you for all you're doing, and thank you to all the devotees who are here, who keep this institution warm and well lit and vital, so that anybody from anywhere in the GTA can come here and feel the effects of the upliftment of Bhakti Yoga. Om Tat Sat. That means the end. Hare Krishna. And now we have prasadam, food for everybody, not just in this room, but anybody in GTA. So if you know anybody, text them, tell them to get on down here. We're having a pancake breakfast for the whole state. Hare Krishna. Or whatever you may.